Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day today. I wanted to share with you the beautiful blooms on my fancy fresco. She has been growing in full water culture now for a year and a half, and she's rebloomed and her root system is doing really well. So I wanted to just go over some tips and recommendations with you that I've learned over the past 2 years of growing Phalenopsis orchids in full water culture. Some things I have learned from success, and some things I've learned from things that just didn't work. That's how we all learn. So I wanted to just go over some things that have worked for me, and hopefully they will help you have success with your water culture Phalenopsis orchids as well. So I'd like to say at the beginning of the video, if you're a beginning orchid grower, you've never grown an orchid before, I would highly recommend you learn how to grow orchids in bark or in moss before you try this growing method. This is what I call an advanced growing method. So just a heads up, it's going to be easier for you to learn how to grow orchids if you use traditional media than if you start out with water culture. And with that being said, let me show you how I care for this beautiful orchid. As you see, she is just she's a beautiful, beautiful orchid. She's got a really good root system and beautiful foliage. What I do is I give this orchid 2 dry days a week, not in a row. I give it a dry day about every 4 days. And when I drain the water from the vase, I keep most of it back. I do about a 50% established water and 50% fresh water change every other time that I change out this water. So about once a week, once every 8 days or so, it gets 50% fresh water. It really works well for me. And my vases don't get dirty quickly. There is algae in there, but it doesn't take over. It's under control. So everyone was wondering, when you're doing partial water changes, are your vases going to get dirty? No, I have not cleaned this vase in months. And as you see, you can still see clear through it. And another question I'm asked really often is, do you see this webbing right over here? I've been asked what that is. It is microfilament. I believe it is part of the roots. I know that it does no harm because this has been here for about a year. I don't try to take that off because I do believe it's part of the root system. It could be that it develops this webbing as an adaptation to water culture, but I don't remove it. I tried to remove it from another plant and I actually tore up the roots. So as you see, this microfilament does nothing to harm the plant, so I left it alone. Another thing I've mentioned in several of my videos is that I stopped spraying roots with hydrogen peroxide. I have found that they grow much better when you don't spray them with hydrogen peroxide. I do recommend you use sterilized scissors when you cut into any part of your orchid, especially your roots. But I believe that that's enough sterilization. I believe that the hydrogen peroxide kills beneficial bacteria that the orchid needs on the root system. When I cut a rotten root, the rotten roots are the brown squishy ones. When you squeeze the root, it just squishes between your fingers. What I do with that is I take sterilized scissors, I cut right above where it's rotted. And then I'm going to spray down the entire root system with just plain water to rinse it off. And then I'll let that root system dry for the day so that where I've cut into it, it will form a callus. And I found that that method is much better for me. My roots don't continue to rot when I treat them this way. And another really important thing to learn how to do for your Phalaenopsis orchid in full water culture or semi-water culture is to fertilize them. This is one of my most commonly asked questions on my channel. So this is my video on how I fertilize my full water culture Phalaenopsis. And you can also watch as I water them down. I like to just water the root systems down once every week or so. It just kind of keeps the root system healthy. So this is my fertilizing video. And this is the Phalaenopsis that I learned my fertilizing routine on. This is my white tester phal, and I would fertilize this one before I'd fertilize my others. This is how I tweaked and learned my fertilizing routine. So I fertilized this one for about 7 months really well, and as you see, it's healthy and it's spiking and the root system is just wonderful. Instead of calling it my tester phal, I am going to nickname this one White Diamonds because it has a white bloom on it. So there's power in tester phals. You can take one plant from your collection and you can fertilize it, do different things with it, experiment with it, and see if it works. I don't do anything radical with my little tester phal here. As you see, it's very, very happy. But this is how I learned how to fertilize, was with this tester phal. So I highly recommend you have one plant that you can try new things on, even if it's a different fertilizer that you're wanting to use. It's a lot better to try it out on one plant than to use it on all of your plants before you know what kind of results you're going to get. The phals I've successfully grown in water culture for about 1.5 years. These are the ones that I've started out in water culture in the spring or in the fall when I first brought them home from purchasing them. All of my established orchids that I've had in my collection for years, they didn't thrive in the method. They survived, but they didn't thrive and grow. So I converted them back into media. I've also found from my experience that either Phalaenopsis orchids love water culture or they don't do well in it at all. So if you start losing roots, let's say you start losing more than 2 or 3 roots, I convert those back into media. I've found that temps and humidity are really important. They don't do well in cold and arid conditions. If your room isn't warm enough, your water culture phal isn't going to thrive. As I've said before, you need to keep in mind this is an advanced method. So if you find that this is not something that your orchid likes, I wouldn't hesitate to go ahead and convert it back to media. And another point about the roots, if the media doesn't come off easily when you're trying to bare root your orchid, when you're trying to convert it over to water culture, if that media doesn't come off, then place it in the same type of a media. Media in water will rot the roots. So if you've got some stubborn pieces of bark that won't come off the root system, don't try to pry them off. It will damage the roots. I would just go ahead and repot that one in bark. So it's really, really wise to have some emergency or backup media handy just in case your conversion doesn't go as well as you think it should. I always have bark and moss handy just in case something happens that media doesn't come off when I'm trying to convert to water culture. So If your water culture method looks a little bit different than mine and you're having success with it, then I suggest you keep on doing exactly what you're doing. I think that everyone does water culture a little bit differently because my environment is going to be different than your environment. So if you're doing things that are successful, then oh my goodness, then congratulations and keep up with that routine. So I hope you all are just having a fabulous day and be highly favored, deeply loved, and greatly blessed. And we'll talk to you all next time.